just not a lot of romantic music in my music. Like, there's not a lot of like, there's not a place for that in the language of it really. So everything ends up sounding pretty clean. Yeah, the music, I guess, always points upwards. Like it's an excited music, I hope. I also think that I think there's a lot of kind of nasty, pessimistic music that other people are much better at writing than I could ever be. I don't really have like genuinely pessimistic thoughts, so it's hard for me to get involved in that kind of like bogged down feel. It would be hard for me to express it, I think. So. Well, it's interesting, when I hadn't heard this term until I got to school, but a composer, I don't even remember who it was, described his own music as being communicative rather than non-communicative, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting distinction to have drawn. And then I realized, well, that kind of is a key distinction, that's a key issue that a lot of composers wrestle with. In minimalism, I think it's really interesting because you have, in the 60s and 70s, this music being presented as math, right? All those early Russian class pieces, the composers are saying it's just a process. All it is a process. There's no like Wagner here. There's no secret agenda. And then of course you listen to it and you realize, well, okay, you can say what you like, but the fact of the matter is that those pieces are incredibly communicative, at least to me. I had a weird access to the Wellesley library, so my mother teaches at Wellesley, and so I would send her these insane lists of scores and CDs I wanted her to check out. And she doesn't teach in the music department, she teaches in the art department, but she, as a professor, could just take out whatever she wanted for a sort of indefinite amount of time. So I really haphazardly just send her to get stuff without really knowing what it was. So I would hear, like for instance, we sang, there's this Messiaen thing that occasionally happens in Anglican churches, you know, for a little decadent French moment, and I was like, oh, who's this? You know, so I looked on the really primitive catalog and found that there was so much Messiaen that you could have, and I was like, oh, let's get that. And then she lugged back these enormous, this heavy ass French scores, you know, the billion pages and you know, chromochromy and all that stuff, and it was, and of course, I thought, oh, this is amazing. How cool is this? But no one had been saying, you know, looking at this, looking at that, and of course I was taking private lessons with a variety of people, but no one ever really caught on that I was completely out of it on basically 19th century European music. Like, I just had no idea, and it turned out to be kind of a blessing, right? Because I feel like 19th century German music, like whatever happened that was genius then, that somehow in the mind of crazy people like brings us to this stuff in the 40s and 50s. There's this really weird kind of sinkhole that starts opening up around Wagner when people start freaking out about music and can't talk about it seriously anymore. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, and again, I have there's a sort of Parsifal right there, but I got into that so much later that when I turned up at Juilliard, I was really naive. Like, all I knew was the American minimal stuff, which I just kind of fallen into randomly. I was like, oh, this is great. Wow, how cool is this? This sounds amazing. You know, David Lang. Oh my God. You know, and then Howells, and then Purcell, and then Bird and Ty and Gibbons, and you know, all this kind of random stuff. And then I heard about Juilliard, and everyone was Fitzner and these, you know, obscure leader, and you know, and I just didn't know anything. Baird and Weber, now just. I feel like I'm like very proudly from the classical tradition. It's like being from Nebraska. Like it does, like you are from there if you're from there. Like there's no, you know, there's no changing it. It doesn't mean that you can't have a productive life somewhere else, and it doesn't mean that you can't. You know what I mean? Like the notion of your genre being something that you have to actively perform, I think is pretty vile. But you know, again, most people are saying, I mean, people who I like and respect are saying in their music, you know, make yourself at home. They're not saying, oh, I'm sorry, you're not from here, you really shouldn't do that. Don't put that there. Take off your shoes. Like, it, you know what I mean? I feel like a much more hospitable reaction among younger people. And I think, you know, I think there's this. And people want to talk about like crossing over and that whole thing. I have no idea what that would mean. Someone just wrote to me on MySpace the other day saying that he, and it actually sounds kind of amazing, he and some, he has a naked string orchestra. Have you heard about this? He was like naked string, I mean, it's amazing. Like that's more MySpace than Publisher. Yeah. Publisher's like, you know, we are a percussion ensemble in Singapore and we want you to write a piece. And then I say, dear percussion ensemble, it would be my pleasure, you know, love Nico. And MySpace is like, naked cello! Write us a thing! I mean, one thing that I like is that the people who represent me in England, you know, they're kind of hands off. They don't have a huge like aggressive. But I think they really just don't know what to do with me, with all my stuff. They're like, what are you doing? You did what? You wrote what? There's a banjo in it? Why? And a choir? Like. One of the things that I loved when I was getting my master's was that, like, basically every day for the class, like, it was informing me at the time, it's like, have you dropped out of school yet? I think you should drop out of school. Why don't you drop out of school right now? Like, you don't need that. What do? You just sort of, you impress your mom with your master's, drop out of school. Like, every day. It was amazing. Which is, you know, sage advice. I mean, obviously I wasn't going to drop out of school, but the idea that, and the idea that you don't need a DMA is actually shocking. Like, when you're even at Juilliard, the question was not, would you like to stay in school until you're 30? Or it was like, where would you like to stay in school until you're 30? If I were in an institution getting a DMA right now, I think that I would be spending a lot less time writing than would be wise.